The emergency beacon screamed across the void between stars, carrying desperate coordinates from the mining colony on Kepler 442c. Admiral Vextar of the Galactic Defense Coalition pressed his scaled fingers against his temples, trying to ease the headache that had been building for the past 3 standard hours. The humans were late. Not just fashionably late, as their ambassador liked to joke during diplomatic functions. They were seriously, dangerously late. The Zephyrian raiders had broken through the outer defenses of the Kepler system 12 hours ago, and the mining colony's population of 40,000 beings was trapped on the surface with nowhere to run. Status report, Vextar commanded, his voice carrying the weight of command across the bridge of the Coalition flagship Harmony's Edge. Lieutenant Commander Yila, a Centaurian with delicate blue skin and oversized eyes, turned from her station. The raiders have deployed siege engines around the colony's main settlements. Our long-range sensors show they're preparing for a full planetary bombardment in approximately 6 hours. And the humans? No word from Earth Command, sir. Their last transmission confirmed they were dispatching reinforcements, but that was 18 hours ago. Vextar's jaw tightened. In his 40 years of military service, he had learned to depend on human reliability. When they said they would send help, help arrived. Usually early, usually in greater numbers than promised, and usually with some clever tactical solution that no other species had considered. The Coalition fleet held position at the edge of the system, outgunned 3-1 by the Zephyrian war vessels. Without human reinforcements, any attempt to break the siege would be suicide. The raiders knew this, which was why they felt comfortable taking their time with the bombardment preparations. Sir, Communications Officer Thren spoke up from his position, his insectoid features clicking with nervous energy. Incoming transmission from the colony surface. Governor Pella is requesting immediate evacuation assistance. Tell the governor we're waiting for reinforcements. Hold position until further notice. But, even as he gave the order, doubt gnawed at Vextar's mind. Where were the humans? In 3 decades of coalition warfare, Earth's forces had never simply failed to show up. They might arrive with unconventional tactics, outdated equipment held together with stubborn determination, or battle plans that seemed insane until they worked perfectly. But they always showed up. The bridge fell into tense silence, broken only by the steady hum of ship systems and the occasional update from scanning stations. Every minute that passed brought the trapped colonists closer to annihilation. Admiral, Yila said suddenly, her voice tight with confusion. I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching the system perimeter. Multiple ships, sir. Very large ships. Vextar straightened in his command chair. Human reinforcements? Unknown, sir. The signatures are unusual. Much larger than standard coalition vessels. And there are a lot of them. The main display flickered to life, showing the outer edge of the Kepler system. Dozens of contacts appeared on the tactical screen, moving in perfect formation toward the inner planets. Vextar had expected perhaps 5 or 6 human destroyers, maybe a heavy cruiser if Earth Command was feeling generous. What he saw instead made his scaled hands tremble. Massive vessels, each one easily 3 times the size of his flagship, moved through space with purpose and precision. Behind them came smaller ships, but even these dwarfed most coalition vessels. The formation stretched across dozens of kilometers, a fleet so large it seemed to bend the very fabric of space around it. Mother of stars, Thren whispered. How many ships are there? Yila's fingers danced over her console, her blue face growing pale as the numbers updated. Initial count shows 73 vessels, sir. No, wait. More contacts are appearing. The count is now at 112. Sir, they're still coming. Hail the lead vessel, Vextar ordered, trying to keep his voice steady. The communications array crackled to life, and a distinctly human voice filled the bridge. Coalition vessel Harmony's Edge, this is Captain Sarah Martinez of the Earth vessel Determination. We're here to assist with the situation on Kepler 442c. Vextar leaned forward. Captain Martinez, this is Admiral Vextar. We were expecting a small reinforcement fleet, but your formation appears to be substantial. There was a pause, and when Captain Martinez spoke again, there was something odd in her tone. Something that made Vextar's combat instincts flare to life. Admiral, we need to discuss the situation in private. Can you join us aboard the Determination? Captain, with respect, we have a siege situation developing.
Perhaps we should coordinate our attack plans immediately. Another pause. Admiral, there won't be any attack. We need to talk, and we need to talk now. Lives depend on it. The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence.
Vexstar stared at the massive human fleet on his tactical display, his mind racing to understand what was happening. Sir, Yila said quietly, the human fleet is not taking up attack positions. They're moving toward the mining colonies, but their formation suggests evacuation protocols.
That's impossible. 40,000 beings can't be evacuated with the Zephyrian fleet in the system.
The raiders would target the evacuation ships. But, even as he spoke, Vexstar watched the human vessels break into smaller groups. Some moved toward the besieged planet, others began establishing defensive positions, and a third group positioned themselves directly between the coalition fleet and the Zephyrian raiders. Admiral, Communications Officer Thren's voice was tight with disbelief. The Zephyrian fleet they're withdrawing from their siege positions.
What?
Sir, they're pulling back.
All vessels are moving away from the planet's surface.
Vexstar's mind struggled to process what he was seeing.
The Zephyrian raiders were among the most vicious pirates in the galaxy.
They didn't retreat from inferior forces, and they certainly didn't abandon siege positions just because more enemy ships arrived.
Scan the human fleet, he ordered. Full spectrum analysis.
I want to know what kind of ships those are. Yila's hands flew over her console, and her face grew progressively more pale as data flooded her screens.
Sir, these aren't standard coalition vessels. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases.
The largest ships are reading power outputs that exceed our entire fleet combined.
Weapons? Unknown, sir.
The ships appear to be heavily armed, but the technology it's not in our databases.
It's not like anything we've seen from Earth before. A chill ran down Vexstar's spine.
In 30 years of working alongside human forces, he thought he understood their capabilities. Fast, clever, adaptable, but limited by their relatively recent entry into galactic civilization. Their ships were tough but simple, their weapons effective but basic. The vessels on his screen suggested something else entirely. Sir, Thren interrupted, incoming message from Captain Martinez.
She's requesting you beam aboard the Determination immediately. She says the situation is more complex than we understand.
Vexstar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Confusion, fear, and uncertainty reflected back at him from every station. The Zephyrian raiders were retreating, the humans had arrived in impossible numbers with impossible ships, and everything he thought he knew about the balance of power in the galaxy was crumbling around him. Prepare the shuttle, he said quietly. I'll go aboard their vessel. Sir, Yila protested, we don't know what their intentions are.
This could be a trap. Lieutenant Commander, if the humans wanted us dead, I don't think they would need to trick us aboard their ship to accomplish it.
He gestured toward the tactical display, where the massive human fleet continued to position itself around the mining colony.
Besides, look at the evacuation ships already launching from the planet's surface. Whatever they're doing, they're saving lives.
As his shuttle prepared for launch, Vexstar caught one last glimpse of his tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was now in full retreat, their vessels jumping to hyperspace as fast as their engines could engage. 40 years of military experience told him that pirates didn't run from battles they could win. Which meant the humans had shown up with something that made the raiders believe they couldn't win. The question that terrified him was simple: if this wasn't the human military he knew, then what exactly had Earth just deployed to his sector? And why had Captain Martinez sounded so grim when she spoke about evacuation instead of victory? As his shuttle crossed the void toward the massive human vessel, Admiral Vexstar couldn't shake the feeling that everything he thought he knew about humanity was about to change forever. The relief he had expected to feel at their arrival was replaced by a cold dread that settled deep in his bones. The humans were here, just as they had promised. But something was very, very wrong. The shuttle bay of the Determination stretched beyond anything Admiral Vexstar had ever seen aboard a human vessel. The ceiling disappeared into shadows high above, and the deck could have accommodated his entire flagship with room to spare. Automated systems guided his shuttle to a landing platform with mechanical precision that spoke of technology far beyond what he expected from Earth. Captain Sarah Martinez waited at the base of the platform, flanked by two officers in uniforms Vexstar didn't recognize. The fabric seemed to shift and shimmer, displaying information and tactical data across the surface in patterns that hurt his eyes to follow directly. Admiral Vextar, Captain Martinez extended her hand in the human gesture of greeting.
Thank you for coming.
We have much to discuss and very little time. Up close, Vextar could see the strain in the captain's face. She was young for a ship commander, perhaps 40 standard years, with the kind of weathered look that spoke of hard decisions and difficult campaigns. But there was something else in her eyes, something that made his combat instincts scream warnings.
Captain, I must ask about your fleet.
These vessels are not in any coalition database.
No, they wouldn't be.
Martinez gestured for him to follow as they walked across the vast hangar deck.
Admiral, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels of Earth government.
Until 6 months ago, only a handful of people in the galaxy knew these ships existed. They entered a lift that rose through what seemed like kilometers of ship interior. Through transparent sections of the hull, Vextar could see the organized chaos of a massive evacuation operation. Ships he couldn't identify were ferrying beings up from the planet's surface in numbers that defied physics.
How many colonists have you evacuated already? He asked.
37,412 as of 10 minutes ago.
We'll have the rest off planet within the hour.
Vextar's jaw dropped.
That's impossible. The Zephyrian siege would have prevented any large-scale evacuation.
The Zephyrian fleet jumped to hyperspace the moment our forward scouts entered the system. They didn't wait to see what we were planning.
Why would they retreat from a mining colony raid? The potential profits from those settlements would be enormous.
Captain Martinez stopped walking and turned to face him.
Admiral, the Zephyrian Empire isn't raiding anymore. They're fleeing. All of them.
Every pirate fleet, every raider clan, every criminal organization in this sector of the galaxy is running as fast and as far as they can.
From what? From us.
The lift stopped at what appeared to be the bridge level, and Martinez led him through corridors lined with displays showing tactical information from across the galaxy. Vextar recognized star charts, but the scale was wrong. The displays showed not just local systems, but entire galactic arms, with fleet positions marked in real time across thousands of light-years.
Captain, how many ships does Earth have deployed? Currently? Active deployment includes approximately 12,000 vessels across 47 sectors.
Vextar stopped walking.
12,000? That's more ships than the entire coalition fleet.
Admiral, the coalition fleet numbers roughly 8,000 vessels.
Our current deployment is not our full strength.
They entered what was obviously the ship's primary conference room. A massive holographic display dominated the center, showing the Kepler system and the ongoing evacuation. But, around the edges of the display, Vextar could see markers for other systems, other operations, a web of human activity that spanned half the galaxy.
Sit down, Admiral, Martinez said gently. Please. Vextar lowered himself into a chair that automatically adjusted to accommodate his physiology.
The implications of what he was seeing crashed over him like a tidal wave.
How long has Earth been hiding this level of military capability?
We haven't been hiding it, exactly.
We've been preparing it.
Martinez activated the holographic display, and the image zoomed out to show the entire local galactic arm. Red markers indicated what Vextar assumed were crisis points or threat locations.
There were hundreds of them. For what? For the Devourers.
The word hit Vextar like a physical blow. The Devourers were legend, nightmare stories told to frighten children and cadet officers. An ancient enemy that had supposedly consumed entire galactic civilizations millions of years ago before disappearing into the void between galaxies.
The Devourers are myth, he said automatically. No, Admiral. They're not. Martinez manipulated the display, and the view pulled back further, showing the space between galaxies.
18 months ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy signatures moving through intergalactic space.
The signatures matched theoretical profiles for Devourer fleet movements.
Vextar's hands trembled as he gripped the arms of his chair.
You're saying they're returning? They never left. Our analysis suggests they've been moving between galaxies in a feeding cycle that lasts roughly 50 million years.
They consume all advanced life in a galaxy, then move on to the next while the previous galaxy slowly recovers and rebuilds civilization. The holographic display showed projected flight paths converging on their galaxy from multiple directions. The scale was incomprehensible, fleet movements across millions of light-years, timed with precision that spoke of intelligence vast and patient beyond imagining.
How long do we have? Best estimates suggest first contact in 14 to 16 months.
They'll hit the outer rim systems first, then work their way inward. Every world they take makes them stronger, every species they consume adds to their knowledge and capabilities. Vextar stared at the display, his mind struggling to process the scope of the threat.
And this is why you've been building this fleet in secret? Not just building, Admiral. Evacuating. What?
Martinez changed the display again, and Vextar saw something that made his blood freeze. Star charts showing human colony worlds, all marked with evacuation schedules and population transfer plans. Luna, Mars, the orbital habitats around Jupiter, the mining colonies in the outer solar system.
Everything was being systematically emptied. We're not here to fight the Devourers, Admiral. We're here to save as many people as possible before they arrive.
But surely Earth's defenses. Earth was evacuated 4 months ago.
The words hung in the air like a death sentence.
Vextar felt his worldview crashing down around him as the implications sank in. Humanity, the newest member of the galactic community, the species everyone else looked down on for their primitive technology and aggressive tendencies, had been planning the largest evacuation in galactic history while the rest of the galaxy remained blissfully unaware of the approaching doom.
Where are you taking everyone? The Andromeda Galaxy.
Our deep space scouts have identified suitable worlds there, far enough away to be safe when the Devourers finish with the Milky Way.
That's impossible.
The journey to another galaxy would take millions of years.
Martinez smiled grimly.
Admiral, you're still thinking in terms of conventional physics. The ships you see here are not built with Coalition technology. She gestured to the massive displays around them, the impossible scale of the evacuation operation, the fleet that had intimidated the Zephyrian raiders into immediate retreat.
Where did this technology come from?
The same place we learned about the Devourers.
We found ruins, Admiral. Ruins left by the last civilization the Devourers consumed in this galaxy.
Hidden deep in what your charts call the Dark Nebula, protected by gravitational anomalies that kept them hidden for 50 million years. Vextar's mind raced. The Dark Nebula was considered a navigation hazard, a region of space so twisted by gravity and radiation that no sane captain would risk entering it.
If the humans had found something there, something left by a previous civilization. The ruins contained complete technological databases, construction blueprints, and, most importantly, detailed records of the Devourer feeding cycle. The species that built those databases knew they were doomed, but they left everything they could for whoever came after. How many species have you contacted about evacuation? Martinez hesitated. All of them, Admiral.
Every member species of the Coalition received evacuation offers 6 months ago.
That's not possible. The Coalition Council never discussed any evacuation plans. No, they didn't.
Because most species governments classified our messages as human madness and refused to take them seriously. A few smaller colonies and independent systems have accepted our help, but the major powers have all declined. Vextar felt a chill of recognition. The formal diplomatic protocols, the careful language that would have been required for such communications. He could picture the Coalition Council receiving humanity's warnings about a mythical ancient enemy and evacuation offers to another galaxy, and he could picture their dismissive response.
The Zephyrians know, don't they? That's why they're fleeing. Pirates and raiders live on the edge of civilized space. They see things the core worlds ignore.
Some of them have detected the Devourer advanced scouts and drawn their own conclusions.
How many people can you evacuate before the Devourers arrive? Martinez was quiet for a long moment. If every species cooperated fully? Maybe 10% of the galaxy's population. Without cooperation? Less than 2%. The numbers hit Vextar like a physical blow.
Trillions of beings across thousands of worlds, most of them completely unaware that their entire civilization was about to end.
What do you need from me?
Your help convincing the Coalition Council to authorize emergency evacuations. Your word carries weight with the member species.
People trust you.
Vextar looked around the conference room at the display showing evacuation operations across dozens of systems, at the impossible technology that humanity had hidden until the last possible moment, at the careful planning that had been going on while the rest of the galaxy argued about trade routes and mining rights.
Captain, even if I could convince them, how do we evacuate 40 billion beings from the Coalition core worlds in 14 months? We don't.
Martinez's voice was soft but firm.
We save who we can, Admiral.
And we make sure that when the Devourers move on to their next galaxy, there are still people alive to remember what we lost. The emergency session of the Coalition Council convened 3 days after Admiral Vextar's return from the human fleet. Representatives from 47 member species gathered in the Great Chamber on Centauri Prime, their voices creating a cacophony of outrage, disbelief, and fear that echoed off the crystalline walls. Vextar stood at the speaker's podium, watching the faces of beings he had served alongside for decades. Chancellor Mora of the Centaurian Republic sat rigid in her floating chair, her blue skin darker than usual with stress. The massive bulk of Representative Thok from the Granite Consortium filled an entire section of seating, his rocky features set in obvious skepticism. Ambassador Yila of the Avian Confederacy clicked her beak nervously as she shuffled through data tablets. Honored representatives, Vextar began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics.
I have seen the human fleet with my own eyes.
I have witnessed their evacuation capabilities.
What I'm telling you is not speculation or human propaganda. It is fact. Chancellor Mora leaned forward.
Admiral, you're asking us to believe that humanity has been hiding a fleet of 12,000 ships, that they've somehow developed technology superior to our most advanced research, and that an ancient enemy from galactic legend is about to destroy all civilized life.
I'm asking you to believe the evidence, Chancellor. Representative Thok's voice rumbled like grinding stone. Evidence?
All we have is your word about mysterious ruins and impossible technology.
Where are these ruins? Why haven't human archaeologists published their findings? Why the secrecy?
Because they knew how we would react, Vextar said quietly.
Look around this chamber. How many of you are taking this seriously?
A reptilian delegate named Esikatar rose from his position near the back of the chamber.
Even if we accept your claims about human capabilities, the logistics are impossible.
Evacuation of our core worlds would require transportation for 40 billion beings across 37 systems.
The infrastructure doesn't exist.
The humans have already evacuated 37,000 beings from Kepler 442c in less than 2 hours. Their evacuation infrastructure is beyond anything we've imagined.
Mining colonists, scoffed Ambassador Yila. Evacuating a few thousand workers is vastly different from relocating entire planetary populations.
Vextar activated the chamber's holographic display system, showing the recorded data from his encounter with the human fleet. The massive vessels appeared in three-dimensional detail above the assembled representatives, their impossible size causing gasps throughout the chamber.
These ships exist. I've walked through one of them. Each vessel can carry populations equivalent to a major city. The humans have thousands of them. Chancellor Mora studied the display intently. Assuming these recordings are accurate, where did this technology come from? 6 months ago, human vessels were considered adequate but unremarkable.
Now you're showing us ships that dwarf our largest dreadnoughts.
They found ruins, Chancellor. Technological databases left by the civilization that was consumed during the last Devourer feeding cycle. The Devourers, Representative Thok said, his voice heavy with disdain. Ancient monsters that consume galaxies. Children's stories and academic fantasies.
Vextar manipulated the display, showing the star charts Captain Martinez had shared with him. The projected Devourer approach routes appeared as red lines converging on their galaxy from multiple directions, the timing and coordination suggesting intelligence of terrifying scope. The humans detected energy signatures 18 months ago. Massive formations moving through intergalactic space. The pattern matches theoretical models for Devourer fleet movements that were developed by xenoarchaeologists decades ago.
Ambassador Yila clicked her beak thoughtfully. Theoretical models based on mythology and speculation. Based on ruins found across the galaxy, Ambassador. Dozens of dead worlds showing similar patterns of destruction. Advanced civilizations that simply vanished, leaving behind only fragments and warnings. A younger delegate from the Aquatic Alliance raised a tentacle. Admiral, why would the humans share this information with us? If they have the capability to evacuate their own population, why risk revealing their technology to potential competitors? Vextar had expected this question. Because they're not trying to save themselves, Representative. They're trying to save as many people as possible. The human evacuation of Earth was completed 4 months ago. They're still here, still operating evacuation missions, because they believe in preserving life. The chamber fell into uncomfortable silence as the implications sank in.
The idea that humanity had already abandoned their homeworld while remaining in coalition space to save other species challenged everything the assembled representatives thought they understood about human nature.
Chancellor Mora spoke carefully. Admiral, what specific evidence do we have of approaching Devourer forces? Vextar changed the display to show recent deep space monitoring data. Long-range sensors across the outer rim have detected gravitational anomalies consistent with massive fleet movements.
The Zephyrian pirate clans have abandoned their traditional territories and are fleeing toward the galactic rim. Criminal organizations throughout the outer systems are liquidating their assets and disappearing. Pirates and criminals are hardly reliable sources of intelligence, Representative Thok observed.
They're the first to detect threats because they operate in regions we don't monitor closely.
Their behavior suggests they've encountered something that terrifies them more than coalition justice. Ambassador Yila accessed her data tablet, reviewing information that had been streaming in since the emergency session was announced.
Admiral, we've received reports of unusual human fleet movements across 17 sectors. If your claims are accurate, why haven't they requested formal coalition assistance for evacuation operations?
They did, Ambassador.
6 months ago. Every member species government received detailed evacuation proposals and offers of assistance.
Every government classified those communications as low-priority diplomatic noise and filed them away. The silence that followed was deafening. Representatives exchanged glances as the realization dawned that they had collectively ignored what might have been the most important communication in galactic history.
I want to see those communications, Chancellor Mora said firmly.
Within minutes, diplomatic archives were accessed and the human evacuation proposals appeared on every representative's personal display. The documents were comprehensive, detailed, and terrifyingly specific about timelines, population estimates, and projected survival rates. Representative Thok's rocky features cracked with what might have been embarrassment. These proposals contain technical specifications for evacuation vessels that we dismissed as impossible fabrications. The same vessels you've now seen recording of, Vextar pointed out.
A delegate from the Silicon Collective spoke through its translation device. If we accept the premise that evacuation is necessary, what are the humans proposing now?
Vextar had prepared for this moment. Priority evacuation of coalition core worlds within the next 12 months. Beginning with populations most vulnerable to the projected Devourer approach vectors. Temporary relocation to staging areas in the Outer Rim, followed by transport to designated safe zones in the Andromeda Galaxy.
Andromeda? Chancellor Mora's voice rose in disbelief. The journey to another galaxy would take millions of years with conventional technology. The humans are not using conventional technology, Chancellor. Ambassador Yila accessed additional data.
Admiral, preliminary analysis of the human vessel configuration suggests they're using some form of dimensional manipulation for faster-than-light travel.
The energy requirements alone should be impossible to generate. The ruins they discovered contained complete technological databases. Not just ship designs, but fundamental principles of physics that we haven't yet understood.
Representative Thok leaned forward, his massive bulk causing his seat to groan under the weight. Even if we accept all of your claims, the political implications are staggering. You're asking us to abandon our homeworlds, our civilizations, our entire way of life based on human interpretation of ancient ruins and theoretical threats.
I'm asking you to survive, Vextar said simply. The humans have already proven their evacuation capabilities.
They've already sacrificed their own homeworld to save as many people as possible.
They're offering us the same chance.
A representative from the Crystalline Federation chimed in with a voice like breaking glass.
What guarantees do we have that this isn't an elaborate human deception? A way to force us into dependence on their technology?
Vextar had expected this accusation as well.
What would they gain?
They already possess technology superior to anything we have. They could have conquered the coalition months ago if that was their intention.
Instead, they're spending enormous resources trying to save populations that have largely rejected their warnings. Chancellor Mora stood, her decision clearly weighing heavily on her conscience. Admiral, this council needs time to evaluate the evidence and consult with our respective governments. The scale of what you're proposing. Time is exactly what we don't have, Chancellor. Every day of delay means fewer people saved. The chamber erupted into heated discussions as representatives tried to process information that challenged their fundamental understanding of reality. Vexstar watched the debates with growing frustration, knowing that each minute of political maneuvering brought the galaxy closer to disaster. His communicator chimed with an urgent message from Coalition deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors had detected massive energy signatures at the edge of the galaxy. The signatures matched the theoretical profiles for Devourer scout forces. First contact was no longer a distant possibility. It was imminent. Vexstar looked around the chamber at representatives still arguing about political implications and evidence standards, and felt a chill of despair. The humans had been right about everything so far. They had been right about the approaching threat, right about the need for evacuation, and right about how other species would react to their warnings. As the debates raged around him, Vexstar realized that the Coalition Council's decision might already be too late. The first Devourer scout ship emerged from the void between galaxies 6 days after the Coalition Council's emergency session ended in deadlock. Admiral Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching long-range sensor data that confirmed humanity's worst predictions. The vessel was enormous, easily 50 kilometers in length, its hull composed of what appeared to be living metal that shifted and flowed like liquid mercury. It moved with purpose through the outer rim systems, scanning planets and cataloging lifeforms with mechanical precision that spoke of intelligence both vast and utterly alien. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Yila reported from her station, the scout ship has completed its survey of the Helix Nebula colonies. It's moving toward the vegan settlements. Any hostile actions? None yet, sir. It appears to be gathering information. Vexstar's communicator crackled to life with an incoming transmission from Captain Martinez aboard the Determination. Admiral, we're tracking the scout ship's movements. It will reach Coalition core space within 48 hours. Captain, what are your intentions? We're implementing emergency evacuation protocols for any system willing to accept assistance. So far, we've had positive responses from 14 minor colonies and 3 independent settlements. And the Coalition core worlds? There was a pause before Martinez replied. The Coalition Council is still in deliberation, Admiral. Chancellor Mora has requested additional verification of the threat before authorizing large-scale evacuations. Vexstar closed his eyes, feeling the weight of political bureaucracy in the face of galactic extinction. Captain, how much time do we have? Based on the scout ship's survey pattern, we estimate 46 hours before it transmits its findings back to the main Devourer fleet. Once they receive confirmation of viable populations, the feeding swarm will arrive within days. Through the viewport of his bridge, Vexstar could see human evacuation vessels moving between the outer colonies like busy insects, ferrying civilians to massive transport ships that waited in the darkness beyond. The operation was running with clockwork precision, but the scale of need was overwhelming. Sir, Communications Officer Thren interrupted, incoming priority transmission from the Centaurian Republic. Chancellor Mora is requesting immediate conference with senior coalition commanders. Put her through. Chancellor Mora's blue face appeared on the main display, her features tight with stress and fear. Admiral, our deep space monitors have confirmed the presence of the alien vessel. The energy signatures match human predictions exactly. Chancellor, will the Council authorize evacuations now? The Council has voted to implement emergency protocols. However, many representatives remain skeptical about the necessity of complete planetary evacuation. They've approved limited civilian transfers to temporary safety zones within our own galaxy. Vexstar felt his heart sink. Chancellor, with respect, temporary safety zones within the galaxy won't protect anyone from the Devourers. Captain Martinez has made it clear that only intergalactic relocation offers genuine safety. Admiral, you're asking us to abandon our entire civilization based on human interpretation of theoretical threats. The political implications alone. The conversation was interrupted by urgent alerts from every sensor station on the bridge. New contacts were appearing on the tactical displays, massive signatures emerging from the void at multiple points around the galaxy's perimeter.
Sir, Yila's voice was tight with fear, multiple contacts appearing across 17 sectors. The energy signatures are consistent with the scout ship, but these vessels are much larger. Vexstar stared at the tactical display as the scope of the arriving force became clear. Hundreds of ships, each one dwarfing the largest coalition vessels, moving inward from the galactic rim in a coordinated pattern that spoke of overwhelming intelligence and organization.
Chancellor, he said quietly, I think the theoretical threat just became very real.
The transmission from Centauri Prime cut off as Chancellor Mora presumably dealt with similar alerts from her own monitoring stations. Vexstar was left staring at a tactical situation that exceeded his worst nightmares. His communicator crackled again with Captain Martinez's voice. Admiral, we're detecting massive Devourer fleet movements across all sectors. The feeding swarm has arrived ahead of schedule.
How much time do we have? For evacuation?
Maybe 6 hours before they reach the core worlds.
Sir, we need your help. What can I do? My fleet is outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Not your fleet, Admiral. Your voice. There are still coalition populations that will listen to you.
We have evacuation ships standing by, but we need people to board them willingly. Vexstar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. Beings he had served with for years, trusted allies who had followed him through dozens of campaigns. They deserved to know the truth about what was coming. Crew of the Harmony's Edge, he announced over the ship's communication system, this is your Admiral. We are facing a threat that exceeds anything in our military history. The approaching vessels belong to a species that has consumed entire galactic civilizations. Our only hope for survival is evacuation to safe zones beyond their reach. He paused, watching his crew process the information. Human evacuation vessels are standing by to transport coalition personnel to safety. Anyone who wishes to board those transports has my full authorization to do so. Lieutenant Commander Yila looked up from her station. Sir, what about you? I'll be coordinating with the human fleet to assist evacuation operations for as long as possible. Then, we stay too, sir. The response came from every station on the bridge simultaneously. Navigation, weapons, communications, engineering, all of his senior officers choosing to remain at their posts rather than seek personal safety. You don't understand the nature of this threat, Vexstar said gently. This isn't a battle we can win. The Devourers don't take prisoners, they don't negotiate, they don't leave survivors. Then, we'll die doing our duty, sir, Yila replied simply. But, we won't abandon the civilians who are depending on us. Captain Martinez's voice crackled through the communicator again. Admiral, we've established evacuation coordinates for coalition personnel. We can extract your crew along with civilian populations. Negative, Captain. My crew and I will remain to assist with evacuation operations until the last possible moment. Admiral, that's not necessary. Our evacuation protocols are designed to save lives, including yours. Captain, how many coalition civilians have you evacuated so far? There was a pause before Martinez replied. Approximately 2 million beings across 47 systems. But, we estimate there are still over 30 billion coalition citizens in the projected Devourer approach vectors. The numbers hit Vexstar like a physical blow. 2 million saved out of 30 billion threatened. The mathematics of galactic extinction were brutally simple. What about non-coalition populations? Independent colonies and smaller species have been more responsive. We've evacuated roughly 18 million beings from non-aligned systems. But, the major population centers are still arguing about political implications while the galaxy burns around them. Through his viewports, Vexstar could see the human evacuation fleet working frantically to save as many lives as possible. Massive transports moved between systems with refugees packed into every available space, their destinations the promised safety of another galaxy entirely. Sir, Thren reported from communications, we're receiving distress signals from the Outer Rim colonies. The Devourer advance forces have reached inhabited systems. What are they doing to the populations? Unknown, sir. The distress signals simply stop. Vexstar accessed long-range sensor data and felt his blood freeze. The Devourer ships were systematically visiting every inhabited world in their path. After each visit, all electronic signatures from the planet disappeared entirely. No communication, no energy readings, no signs of life. Complete consumption.
Captain Martinez, he said into his communicator, how many people can you still evacuate before the Devourers reach the core systems?
If we get full cooperation from coalition authorities, maybe another 5 million.
If governments continue to resist evacuation orders, considerably fewer. 5 million out of 30 billion.
The scope of the approaching catastrophe was beyond comprehension. Admiral, Yila said quietly, incoming transmission from the Crystalline Federation.
They're requesting immediate evacuation assistance. And, the Granite Consortium is signaling for emergency transport, Thren added. As is the Aquatic Alliance.
One by one, as the reality of the Devourer fleet became undeniable, coalition member species began accepting the evacuation offers they had rejected for months. But, Vextar knew it was too late for most of them. The logistics of evacuating entire civilizations couldn't be accomplished in the hours that remained. Sir, Yila said, her voice breaking slightly, I'm receiving a personal message from my homeworld.
My family is requesting evacuation coordinates.
Vextar looked around his bridge at beings who were watching their civilizations die while trying to save as many strangers as possible. The courage required for such sacrifice was beyond anything he had ever witnessed. All personnel with families in evacuation zones are authorized to transmit coordinates immediately, he announced.
No one should face this alone.
As his crew worked to save whatever lives they could, Vextar watched the tactical display showing the remorseless advance of the Devourer fleet. In a few hours, thousands of years of galactic civilization would be reduced to empty worlds orbiting dead stars. But, thanks to human foresight and sacrifice, millions of beings would survive in a distant galaxy. They would remember what was lost, rebuild what could be rebuilt, and carry the knowledge that even in the face of extinction, some species chose to save others rather than themselves. The humans had expected to send reinforcements to a minor colonial crisis. Instead, they had provided the salvation of galactic civilization itself. As the last evacuation ships departed for the safety of intergalactic space, Admiral Vextar realized that he had witnessed the finest moment in the history of sentient life, the moment when one species chose to save everyone else, even at the cost of everything they had ever known. The Devourers would consume the galaxy. But, they would not consume hope.